All right, everybody, welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're tackling something, I guess you could say a little controversial,
Yeah, you could say that.
but definitely fascinating.
Absolutely.
We're looking at an analysis that compares the speaking styles and leadership, I guess, approaches or tactics of Donald Trump and Adolf Hitler.
Right. And it is certainly an attention-grabbing comparison. But again, what we're really interested in here is the power of rhetoric, right?
Yeah.
How can words, specifically the way these two figures use language, influence people and shape events? So that's what we're going to be looking at today.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that jumps out right away to anybody who's read this analysis is the way that both Trump and Hitler present themselves as kind of this only savior for their nations.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they paint this picture of their countries being in deep crisis, and they alone have the unique ability to fix things, right?
Yeah, I mean, you see that throughout history, right? That kind of only savior rhetoric. It can be incredibly powerful because it creates this sense of dependence on the leader, right?
Hmm.
People start to believe that, well, no one else can solve the problems that we're facing. Only this one person has the answers.
Right.
And it can lead to this really dangerous situation where any opposition or alternative viewpoints are seen as threats
Oh, absolutely.
or even treason, right?
Yeah, and
Kind of.
thinking about Trump's State of the Union addresses,
Yeah.
especially the one he just gave, was it earlier this month?
Yeah, just a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, there's this clear pattern of him emphasizing the idea that, his work is just beginning.
Right.
It's like he's constantly reinforcing this idea that only he can truly make America great again.
Yeah, and it's a tactic that we see echoed in Hitler's pronouncements in the early 1930s, right?
Yeah.
He was constantly asserting that only he could restore Germany to its former glory, right?
Yeah.
And he created this cult of personality around himself
Yeah.
that ultimately made it very difficult for anyone to challenge him.
And that's one of the scary things about this type of rhetoric, right? Is that it undermines those democratic processes and it discourages critical thinking.
Absolutely.
It's like, don't even bother questioning me
Right.
because I'm the only one who can save you.
Right.
And that kind of leads into another really striking similarity, I think, which is the way that both leaders create this very clear us versus them division in their speeches.
It's textbook divide and conquer, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Hitler famously targeted, Jews, communists, anyone he deemed un-German, and Trump, during his first term and continuing now into his second, has frequently directed his rhetoric against immigrants, Democrats, the media, anyone he sees as sort of standing in his way.
Right, or threatening this idea of America that he's trying to promote.
Exactly. And the scary part is it can be incredibly effective.
Oh, yeah.
It taps into people's primal instincts of fear and belonging, right? It creates this sense of solidarity among the in-group while simultaneously demonizing the out-group.
And it makes it really hard to have, a nuanced conversation or debate about anything.
Absolutely, right.
Because if you disagree with the leader, even a little bit, you're automatically lumped in with the enemy.
You're either with us or against us.
Yeah, exactly.
There's no middle ground.
And it's not even just the words themselves, right? It's how those words are then amplified and disseminated. And this is where I think that section in your research about state-controlled media was particularly unsettling.
Yeah, that's a really chilling comparison, right?
Yeah.
Because, as you know, Hitler had complete control over the media in Nazi Germany, and he used propaganda to spread his message, to demonize his opponents, and to create this climate of fear and paranoia.
And, Trump doesn't have that level of control over the media here.
Thank goodness.
But he has consistently attacked and undermined the credibility of any news outlet that criticizes him, right? He's constantly labeling them fake news, enemies of the people.
Right, and that has this really corrosive effect on the way that people consume information, right?
Right.
It creates this situation where a significant portion of the population simply doesn't trust any news source that doesn't align with their pre-existing beliefs.
And it makes it really hard to have, a shared understanding of reality, let alone a productive conversation about the issues.
Yes,
And
exactly.
that brings me to another point that you highlighted, which is the way that both leaders have exploited moments of crisis to consolidate their power.
Yeah, this was something that really jumped out at me as well. You had mentioned in your notes something about Hitler's actions after the Reichstag fire. Could you remind us what happened there and how that might relate to Trump's use of the Alien Enemies Act?
Yeah, so back in 1933, the Reichstag building, which housed the German parliament, was set on fire.
Right.
And, most historians believe that this was actually orchestrated by Hitler's own party.
It was a false flag operation.
Right. But Hitler used this event to justify the passage of the Enabling Act, which basically gave him dictatorial powers. It allowed him to bypass the Constitution and rule by decree.
Right, so he used this crisis, this manufactured crisis, to seize even more power.
And it's disturbing to see echoes of this in Trump's actions.
Yeah.
He invoked the Alien Enemies Act earlier this year.
Right, a law that's been largely dormant since World War II.
Right, and he's using it to justify detaining and deporting thousands of non-citizens without due process.
All in the name of national security.
Right.
Which is, a very slippery slope.
It's frightening to think about how quickly those democratic norms can be eroded when, fear and anxiety are running high.
Absolutely. It shows how fragile these institutions can be.
And it highlights the importance of a free press, a robust system of checks and balances, and just a citizenry that's informed and engaged and willing to speak out against injustice.
Absolutely.
So after diving deep into these sources, what are some of the key things that you've learned about the way that these leaders use rhetoric?
Well, I think it really underscores the power of language and the importance of critical thinking. While Trump and Hitler obviously operated in vastly different contexts,
Yeah.
the fact that their rhetorical strategies share so many similarities, I think should give us all pause.
Absolutely.
And cause us to be a little more discerning about the information we consume and the leaders that we choose to follow.
Right. It's a reminder that we need to be vigilant. We need to question what we hear.
Question everything.
Hold our leaders accountable.
Absolutely. And protect and defend those democratic institutions like a free press and an independent judiciary.
Right, because those are the things that can help safeguard against these abuses of power.
Absolutely.
Well, this has been a fascinating, if somewhat disturbing, deep dive.
It has.
So thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And we hope this has given you some food for thought and maybe even spark some further exploration on your own.
Keep those minds sharp out there.
Take care, everybody.